What's up, outliers? If you are not using AI as a trader, you are so far behind the ball. The goal of this video is to walk you through a no frills tutorial on how to use AI as an options trader. As you can see that there's 3 steps we're going to go over right above my head. Then I'm going to walk you through a list of prompts to give you some ideas for how to approach this thing. We're going to talk about comparing different AI tools. And then we're going to spend time doing an actual practical application together live. I'm going to go through without anything pre-generated so that you can see how to do this alongside me. And as you know, I don't edit my videos, so this will be straight all the way through. What's up, everyone? Eric here. Welcome back to the Outliers. Let's talk about this. So AI is literally changing everything. It accelerates quite literally everything you do, but you have to be thoughtful about how you approach this thing because it's very easy to get lost in the sauce and go all over the place. So we're going to start with always a template. Just like in the Marine Corps, we tend to start with what we call an orientation. This is a landscape analysis. This is where you provide an overview of what things look like as they sit today. This is normally after we do something called reconnaissance. Well, we're going to do all the same things, just in a slightly different, less fun sense, but all still very cool. So before we start anything, we have to start thinking through what we do as traders. What are the tasks we perform? What are the steps we take to do things? How do we find ideas? Where do we conduct our research? These are just things to have in the back of your mind, because as we go through the step on prompt engineering, understanding what you do and then some of the capabilities will then inform how you might phrase things. Now, it's important to understand that AI is not omnipotent. It very frequently is wrong. So you have absolutely got to be still the ultimate decision maker, the thinking part of things. The way to look at AI is that it is an accelerator. It is not the end all be all. It will say things very confidently that sometimes are wrong. So you have to be ready to fact check what you're seeing to make sure that you're comfortable with the responses that you're getting. There's a couple ways we can go about that, which we'll talk about. Now, landscape analysis. This is where we have a chance to take a look at different AI tools as they exist and what they're capable of. So again, my preference is not to answer things for you, but help you figure out how to answer things for yourselves. And we can jump into Google. We can throw into something like AI comparison chart or AI comparison or whatever you want. I just grabbed 2 of them from literally the top. I think I normally skip the top one because I normally assume that it's a sponsored post. Go to the second one, and I haven't looked through this yet, but you can see that it absolutely is giving you some high-level overview of all of these different language models. And then same thing for this one, we can see what different tools exist and what they can do. So things like ChatGPT and Llama definitely are a little more diverse. Now, to give you the cheat code version of all this for what I personally like to use, it's actually what you see on the thumbnail. I like to use ChatGPT for general reasoning and back and forth dialogue. I like to use Perplexity for researching things in terms of, I want you to go find research on this or provide background studies on this. Perplexity is good at that. And then I like to use Grok for what happened in the stock market today. Look through X and look through Wall Street bets and see what the most commonly talked about tickers were, that kind of stuff. Now, part of this is you just have to tinker, figure out what you like. There are other tools like Claude, which can really help with things like programming, which is one of the accelerators that we'll talk about. The main note is you have to start with this process. Understanding the landscape, meaning what tools there are, what their capabilities and limitations are, so that you know when you're going through and you're doing your prompting, you can find things that work best. Again, I already gave you the Cliff Notes version of what I've found to work so far. I'll use ChatGPT for reasoning, and that's kind of my go-to unless I'm doing something like research. Let's now move on to the execution step. How do we use them? Well, first, after we go through the information we find in step 1, what I think makes sense is to think about those things that you do as a trader and create categories. So here's some categories to get your mind started. Learning. For a lot of people, learning how to trade, learning how to be better traders is a significant focus. So that's the very first thing you can use AI for. It can be your teacher to look at news for you, to synthesize the markets as they sit, to synthesize economic data as it's coming out for general analysis. The next one here is researching. So you can start thinking through, maybe I want to run a strategy that does this. It can help you with that. Helping you build a trading plan, strategy outlines, log developments. This is what you will find on my YouTube channel, and I have videos about creating trading plans and stuff like that, creating strategies. I have all of this stuff for you, but you can use AI to help you frame your ideas, think through different ways to set up how you want things to sit. And then one of my favorite ways to use it is as a process auditor. One of the really big things that I'm a massive advocate of is external audits. This is where you provide information to somebody that's not yourself to take an objective look through what you're doing, what you're thinking, how you're processing things, and not necessarily to give you direct feedback, although that's always great, but even just to ask you questions. Why are you doing it this way? Why are you doing it this way? That can be a really beneficial process just from a general learning perspective. So now that we know what AI can help us with, we know what kind of AI tools there are, we know how the different AI tools behave, we know the different areas that we want to use AI to help us. Well, now we get into the process of actually using AI. So I want to walk you through prompt engineering at a high level. I'm going to walk you through some basic prompts, and then we're literally going to go into the Prac app right after that. Now, one other AI tool that I did not list that I do think is worth your time, especially if you use Google, is Gemini. Because one of the cool things about Gemini is you can use it in conjunction with all of the files that you have on Google Drive. So I have a giant category of research that I've downloaded from all different places like SSRN, and I literally can use Gemini to query against all of it at once, which is insanely useful. And for those that are in the Outlier Pro Patreon, you already have a file with all of those different studies, and you literally can do the same thing. It's one of the cool things about Gemini's integration. It's just something you should be aware of. All right, so let's get into prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is an iterative process. Sometimes you're going to ask it things or tell it to do things, and it's not going to do what you want, or it's going to give you different results, and you have to coach it. So think of it not as whatever you get is the answer, but be ready to walk it onto target so that it actually is giving you the information you need. You have to be very thoughtful in how you're phrasing things. You're literally talking to a robot. So don't be lazy in your language. Don't take it as it's going to understand anything that you're saying, the subtext of what you're trying to teach it. Now, one of the things that's useful is some models provide a space where it can learn you, and then over time it can become more efficient, which is actually very helpful. You should always use it to teach you what to ask it. So you can start a process and then you could be stuck. And you could say, I don't know what to ask yet. So then you could say, give me 5 questions you think I should ask you next. That kind of thing. And then another thing that's super important is always make it give you sources. Again, this is so that you can verify what it's giving you, because it's not always going to be correct. Actually, very frequently, unfortunately, it'll have errors. So here are a list of prompts. And if you'll notice that these prompts are actually tied to these categories over here. Guess what I did? I went into Perplexity and I said, create a list of 5 questions for each of these topics. I'm not going through all these with you. I'm just showing you an idea on how you can use it. And then these should give you some inspiration. But I actually want to move to the practical application part of this because I think that's what's going to be most useful to you. So I want to go through each of these at a very high level to give you ideas on what you can ask, how you can ask it, so that you can get the information that you want. So first things first is to prime the AI. So this is the only question I asked in this chain. As you can tell, I'm scrolling up, scrolling down. This is in Perplexity. One of the things that I like about Perplexity is that you can tell it to use different AI engines. So right now, even though I'm in Perplexity, I'm actually using ChatGPT Omni. So the first thing I tell it is, I'm an options trader. You are going to perform all these functions for me. Are you ready to rock and roll? This was more just for fun. Ask it if it's ready to rock and roll. So let's start. Let's say that we are a new options trader and we are trying to learn how to trade options. Let's use AI to assist with this. Now, if you're an advanced trader, you literally can apply the same thing. We're all learning. So the only difference is the question you ask might be slightly different. And we'll go through two variations to give you two different levels, beginner and advanced. So let's say I'm a new options trader looking to learn more about options and how they work. Create an outline similar to a class syllabus on what you think I should focus on. Use units and topics for each unit. See what it says. So you can see I'm actually purposely making this a little sloppy, right? This isn't that descriptive, but let's see what it comes up with. And it's actually exactly what I want. So it's giving me a general unit for the topic and then subtopics for each. So now what I want to do is scroll through this. It looks okay. And I want this to be more comprehensive. Make this more in-depth and include outlines for each subtopic and item. So now I'm telling it to go deeper. I want it to be further in depth, and I want it to give me more information about each of these. So far, this is giving me a perfect outline. So what I do after this, once it finishes, I'm going to tell it to create lessons for all topics in Unit 1. Create a lesson for 1.1. And I didn't do all just because it'll take a little while. So now I'm literally having it teach me. It's teaching me. Pretty cool, huh? Now, after you go through learning about the basics of options like this, as with any class you've ever taken, we need to verify what we learned. Help me verify what I've learned. Create a quiz with 10 multiple choice, 10 true false, 5 paragraph, or 5 scenario based open responses, and 1 deeper case study with a more comprehensive response. Prepare an answer key, but do not show it to me until I ask. Now we can use ChatGPT to help us verify what we've learned after what it just gave us. Now, there's other really cool prompts you can do with this once it finishes going through this. And the point that I'm trying to illustrate here is this is literally restricted only by your imagination. And something that I'm building right now for the Patreon folks is a really big list of prompts. The cool part is you don't need that. You literally can make your own using this. It's just a process of iterating and thinking of different things you can ask it. So here it is. It's giving us our multiple choice questions. It's giving us our true false questions. It's giving us our scenario based questions. And then it's giving us an actual case study. So there we go. So now if you're a more advanced options trader. Maybe we're trying to learn how to build our own volatility surface. So let's switch this up. I'm an advanced options trader and want to build my own volatility surface model. Walk me through how to build one in, could be Excel, Python, whatever you want. We'll start with Excel. So you can see, even as a more seasoned investor, you can have it walk you through slightly more complex data points so that you can create your very own surface model if you were so inclined. So this is learning. Now, I already told you that I like to use Grok for news and market analysis, but let's just stick in here for now. And let's start with something basic like summarize the stock market news for today. Include any key economic data points, US based news, trending individual stocks, cryptocurrencies, and upcoming events for tomorrow. Now, what I've definitely noticed is I like to input dates now. So 16/10/24, because a lot of times it will mess up on the dates. So now, first, we're just giving it a general thing. We haven't given it a format. We haven't really told it what we want it to do. And this is how it's summarizing it, which so far this looks good. So we can see it's talking about AVGO, NVIDIA, Palantir, SMCI dropping 12 points, which is kind of funny. And this looks completely fine for a summary, but you can have it go further in depth. So let's say that we wanted to track US manufacturing PMI. We could have it give us historic PMI figures, or we can open up the source that shows it to us and go find it for ourselves. What I like to do is outline a specific template that I want it to use, and I tell it to save it. So I can tell it, remember this format as stock market update for today. We'll throw that in quotes for it. And we're essentially telling it, remember the format. Now, sometimes it'll save it. Sometimes it'll go through and run the analysis again like it's doing right now. But now when I ask it again, it will default to that. Now, again, depending on if you use GPT, which is very good at this, if you use Perplexity, it's a little less rememberful. So I just save the actual prompts that I want, and then I can just copy and paste them in. Okay, so now let's check out researching an idea. So let's say I want to trade earnings releases with options. Help me build a strategy. First, find any research regarding trading options around earnings and summarize the key themes for me. We're off to the races. Now, if you don't know about a specific thing that you might want to do like this, you could zoom it up and you could say, I'm interested in trading options. Give me ideas on how I can trade options for blank. Trade options for things going up. Trade options for things going down. Trade options for earnings. Trade volatility. So this is walking you through with citations from different places about what happens around earnings and how you can place different ideas. Next one. Now that we know that there's an effect around earnings that we might want to trade, let's say I wanted to create a strategy outline for me to test to trade options around the IV contraction of earnings. So now I'm having it skip us down to this. I'm having it going to outline a strategy for us to test. Now, notice I say for me to test because you should not take whatever it gives you. That's not good. We need it to give us some ideas like this, but then we're going to have to test it. So then that's actually the next step. I'm going to have it outline a trade log template for Excel that I can use to test this strategy. So now I don't even have to think about what format might make sense in Excel if I don't know how to do it. I can have it give me something to start with. And there you go. Notice how it gives you specifically the elements that are most important for the trade itself. Now we can also have it build me a pre-trade checklist that applies to all trades I place. Then for this specific strategy, build the unique things I should check before entering the trade. So what I'm doing is I'm having it build a standardized trade checklist that I can apply to everything. And I'm having it build the specific things that matter for this individual strategy, because that's exactly what I do in my own stuff. I have a standardized template for a PreTrade checklist. I don't fill it out anymore. It's kind of mental. But then for each individual strategy that I have, there are things that are specific to the strategy itself. And notice how it's finding the specific things that matter to the strategy itself. Perfect. So now let's ask it for this last part. Process audit can be done in a lot of different ways. You can upload documents to it. You can explain out a trade that you put on in detail and ask it for points of feedback. So process audit has everything to do with using it to help you optimize what you're doing. So let's say for my earnings strategy, evaluate the process as it sits and give me ideas on how I can improve it. So now I'm having it literally audit what it gave me, pretending that, I made up elements of it. And it's literally giving me very specific actionable things that I can do to make this better. So I can look at better historical data analysis, which is really good. Analyzing expected move versus actual move, which is super important. This is literally exactly how you can use this. So there are so many opportunities. The last thing I want to show you is this. What other questions should I ask you about the earnings strategy? So I'm literally teaching it or telling it to tell me what I should ask it, aka teaching myself to know what I don't know. So it's giving me exactly that's why I'm smiling. One of the first questions I think is important to ask is, when should I enter? And it's telling you. You could have it then go down this thread of teach me more about the timing. Take time, tinker with this. This is probably the biggest accelerator that's right in front of you. This has the ability to literally transform a regular trader's approach into something that's much closer to a professional with very little effort. It'll never replace the experience, but I wish I had this. As always, if there's any questions, anything you want me to talk about, make a video on, let me know. Be an outlier. I'll see y'all later.